Welcome back. Walking and Talking, episode 52. We're out here getting our exercise in, getting a little activity, because the weather is, despite a little cloud cover right now, gorgeous. It's warm, it's hot, I'm sweaty, kind of gross. Got a new haircut though. So today, since officially we're at the end of Jack June now, I've done all my Jack Daniel's reviews, including Old 107, which is the standard, rye, Jack Daniel's has a rye, Gentleman's Jack, Single Barrel Select, and also I did Tennessee Honey and Tennessee Fire, which, let's get it out of the way. While some people may enjoy them, they're a little too sweet neat, a little too sweet on the rocks, probably play well in a cocktail or for somebody who's not a huge fan of whiskey or whiskey flavor, but I wasn't enthralled by them. They're a little too sweet. Also, that review didn't technically come out in June because technically those aren't whiskeys. For anybody who doesn't know, to be classified as a whiskey here in the US, it must be at least 40% alcohol or 80 proof. Those are 35% alcohol, which is 70 proof. So technically they're not whiskey and they cannot be labeled as whiskey, at least here in the US and in most of the world. And that's why on the front of the bottle, you'll see it says honey liqueur or cinnamon liqueur blended with Jack Daniel's Tennessee whiskey. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. I want to first start out with a list of my favorite, putting them in ranked order, then giving you kind of some more nuanced opinions about the entire Jack Daniel's line. So first and foremost, let's start with number one, Jack Daniel's Jack Daniel's Old Number 7. I keep trying to call it 107. So Old Number 7 is, or was, very surprising to me. I'd never had it neat before. I'd had it on the rocks. I have not had it on the rocks before now. I had it in Coke. I had it with other sodas, but never on its own, neat or on the rocks. I was really surprised by the complexity and the overall flavor, because it kind of gets a short shrift when it comes to whiskey enthusiasts. It kind of gets pegged as like the McDonald's of whiskey, and it really isn't. It is a big brand. It is a mass-produced product, but it still has a lot of interesting, unique flavor to it. It's a really good whiskey, and I think it gets a lot of hate that it doesn't necessarily deserve. On top of that, it is by far the best price point of most of the big whiskey brands. It doesn't sit at a massive premium, which, big thumbs up. Next, number two, rye. The Jack Daniel's rye not only was a standout in the month, it's a standout rye for me. I'm usually not a big fan of rye. Usually there's too much of its traditional rye spice in there, and there's something about that it's not my flavor. I know a ton of people who love rye whiskey, and all the props to them, but it's just not my thing. This one was. I don't know what about it was different than most other ryes, but I really enjoyed it. A lot of complexity, good amount of spice, a lot of flavor. It was good. It was a really good rye, and that's why it's number two. Now I'm going to cheat a little bit for number three, and I'm going to say it's a tie between Gentleman's Jack and Jack Daniel's Barrel Select. And the reason I'm going to kind of cheat is because each of them are good, and I would say for flavor, the Barrel Select is my favorite, because that little extra proof over the Old Number 7 adds a lot of like complexity and a lot of character to it. And I thought that was by far the best flavor. That said, it sits at a very high price point. And at that price point, it's hard to recommend, because there's a lot of other really interesting whiskeys and really good whiskeys at that price point, both American and otherwise. You've got, for American whiskeys / bourbons, you have Eagle Rare, you have Four Roses Single Barrel, you have Elijah Craig, you have Michter's American and Michter's Bourbon. There's just so much other stuff at that price point that I can't move it much up the list. On the flip side, Gentleman's Jack, well, it's not nearly as expensive, doesn't have the same flavor. I actually prefer Old Number 7 to Gentleman's Jack, because Gentleman's Jack, while it's rounded and nice and pretty and cohesive a flavor, it's very down the center. There's not complexity to it, at least for me. There's not a huge amount of character to it. It's almost dull. It's like they dulled off the flavors or rounded out the flavors from Old Number 7. And that just, it's not me. It didn't speak to me in any real way. So actually, if I was ordering the two, I would order an Old Number 7, even if they were the same price. But that's why they're kind of tied. If I had to really rank them, I would probably go Barrel Select, Gentleman's Jack being last. But I really don't want to do that because they really kind of tie in my book. The price point of Barrel Select kind of nulls out its flavor advantage. The Gentleman's Jack is more expensive and doesn't have any kind of unique special character or flavor to it. So that's why I put them in that order. Now let's talk about I don't want to just kind of like crap on Gentleman's Jack or Barrel Select, because I do think they both have a very good place in the market. That place is kind of in two spots. First, they are interesting. I really think if you haven't had a chance and you get a chance to try that Barrel Select, do it. If you can try the barrel proof version of it, do that, because it basically amps up all those same spices and flavors that I like to kind of that next level. Next, both the Gentleman's Jack and the Barrel Select would make a really good gift, specifically to somebody who's into Jack Daniels. If you have a Jack Daniels drinker and you want to get a bachelor party present or a groom's gift or just a wedding present for him, Gentleman's Jack and Barrel Select are perfect for that, because their presentation does make the experience more special than just your standard number 7. So I would highly recommend, if you have a family member, if you have a friend who's big into Jack Daniels specifically, they love the flavor of Jack, that's their drink, Single Barrel Select and the Gentleman's Jack are both great ways to go. Highly recommend them as gifts, because it's not where you're like looking at a shelf of whiskey and picking a whiskey you want to try. That's getting a present for somebody specifically because they like Jack Daniels, and those two are basically the pinnacle of Jack Daniels. So I think they're great gifts. And again, they have the flavor. They're good whiskey. They're just not my cup of tea, and I don't think they're worth the price if you're buying it on your own. That said, if I was going to a bar and I had all the Jack products laid out in front of me, what I would do, especially if it's summertime, I would get an Old Number 7 on the rocks. I think as a summer drink, Old Number 7 Jack Daniels Tennessee whiskey holds up extremely well to ice, maintains its flavor, maintains its character, and that's really what you want from a whiskey that you're going to put on the rocks. So as a recommendation, if you're going to a bar, there's not a big whiskey selection, get an Old Number 7 on the rocks. And obviously Jack and Coke, it's a classic. There's songs about it all over the place. Yeah, what more can I say? So with that, thank you all for joining me. This has been episode 52, Walking and Talking. I will catch you all later. Peace. Bye.